Welcome to Talking Property. I'm Kimberly Shapcott, property investor, chartered accountant and entrepreneur. Today we are going to be starting off in a series of Talking Property where I'm bringing a group of experts together to discuss a range of topics to do with property. Tonight we're going to be talking about getting started in property, and let me introduce you to my guest this evening. So, Chris.
Hello there, I am Chris Huntingford. I am a partner and licensed conveyancer with Lawson Solicitors, specialising in all things residential property.
And Fiona.
My name is Fiona Gavin. I run the Derby Property Meet. I also am a property investor.
And my final guest today is Gemma.
Hi, I'm Gemma Lawson. I'm a mortgage advisor at Signature Funding Solutions, and we specialise in everything from residential first-time buyers right the way up to big commercial purchases. Our general motto is if it's got walls and a roof, we can pretty much finance it.
Which I love. So let me jump in. Our first point that I thought we'd start off with was investors and networking, and really why networking with other investors is actually a really great way to consider what you're doing, or even if you've got one or two properties, just a great way to see how you're doing and what other ideas are out there. So Fiona, probably a great starting point with running Derby Property Meet. How have you found it at kind of Derby Property Meet and bringing investors together?
Well, we have a monthly event, and what we find is we get property investors from buy-to-let, HMO, serviced accommodation, coming to learn, coming to build relationships. We have our wonderful experts with us every single month, so they're always on hand to answer questions and to give advice. It's about building a strong network around you that can support you. And we like to do it in a fun and friendly way as well.
And as someone who attends every month, I can definitely say we definitely have some fun. How do you guys find it, Gemma? Because Gemma and Chris both attend the event as well. So Gemma, how do you kind of find?
So I think from an advisor perspective, particularly with, dare I say, the market as it is at the moment, what I think works really well with a network like Derby Property Meet is it allows investors to open their eyes to, well, my portfolio is like this at the minute. I'm worried about these elements, be it interest rate rises, be it, cost of living for their tenants and things like that. And because there's, like Fiona's mentioned, so many different investors coming in, it allows people to open their eyes and think, well, could it be more profitable if I do this? Or could I make changes to things if I did it that way? So what we're seeing a lot of internally at Signature is single let investors who are maybe thinking more of the HMO market to try and get that bigger rental yield in from the same size property, and being around like other investors that do that can sometimes bridge that gap and make it a little bit less daunting. And being in a network where you've got people like yourself, Kimberly, who do the big scary projects, and a solicitor and other network investors, and myself as an advisor, it just helps piece it all together. And you can see people going home and going, oh, well, actually that might work for me. And it's such a friendly group. And, like Fiona's mentioned, with different people coming and talking about it, and you can just see it like ping, ping, ping in people's eyes. Like that might be how I either start my journey or make my journey better. And it's great to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And you don't know what you don't know. So, I mean, coming to an event like this, it really opens your eyes to all the different elements of a property transaction. So from my point of view, a lot of it is talking about the risks that are involved in property, and you need to be aware of what you're getting into before you start spending your hard-earned money. So to come to something like this, there's so much information available to you, and we all freely share that information, and it is for the benefit of everybody in the room.
I think that's what I found at other property networking events. It's just kind of really meeting other people who are in the same boat as you, because I imagine you found that, Fiona, as you started investing in property. You kind of start on your own, don't you? And then you're kind of trying to figure out, am I doing it right? Is this how other people are doing it? Are they doing it differently?
Yeah, I think there's, Gemma's touched on the fact that there's a lot changing in the market. And if you're not a property investor, it sounds a scary world at the moment. So having that assurance that actually I'm sat with people who are doing property, they are successful. And there's that saying, isn't there? Your network is your net worth. So it is about mingling with the right people.
No, definitely. So I suppose that kind of leads me on to creating the right relationships to build that network and build your power team, which I suppose we're all kind of power team members in the room tonight. So how do you kind of recommend people kind of build those relationships? Because it can be quite difficult at times, but what kind of advice would you
I think you start with word of mouth, because if you know somebody that's been through that process before and can give you a really good recommendation, and that's a fantastic place to start. If you're not in that position, then there are lots of things available to you now, lots of review platforms and things like that you can go on and do some research into those people that you will be working with as well.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing when you start to build your power team, as you mentioned, is consider what your start, mid and end goals are, because they will change throughout. And it's making sure that, I think some of the biggest pitfalls we sometimes see is when the accountant's got involved from a tax perspective and the advisor hasn't got involved till much later, and the two things don't marry. So trying to, as much as you can, because obviously there's so many different things to try and align, but we're all there to get the right goal for the client. It's just making sure that that goal aligns, because what's right for the client from a solicitor perspective, without speaking to the advisor and the accountant in that sort of trio, it can sometimes fall down at one of the points. So I think the best things I'd say in terms of your power team is engage them all right from the start and have those conversations. And your goals can change. That's absolutely fine. Just as long as everybody's working towards those goals with you, that's what we're all here to do. Like, that's, as a mutual trio, our job is to make sure that our clients are getting that start, middle and end goal as best as they can and in the best way for them. So yeah, aligning us all would be a great idea.
But it's always interesting when you kind of say goals, because people always go, oh no, this is where I want to end up. And it's quite interesting. I bet you found it as you have that relationship over a number of years, and it's like they might meet someone, or they have kids, or they, I don't know, want to start going traveling, and then all of a sudden everything shifts with how they're doing. So there's so many things that life throws us that we never quite know where it is.
I think honesty is so important as well, particularly with your power team, because if you don't tell your lawyer, if you don't tell your financial advisor, oh, I'm planning to do this, then we can't do the best investigations that we need to do to make sure that your interests are safeguarded.
Yeah, no, definitely planning comes, and I think sometimes it's knowing where they're going, because if you know where they're going, then I imagine you'll find a different lender depending if you go, oh well, I'm planning on doing this and this, and you go, oh well, if that's the plan, this lender's better for you than that one. And you kind of go, oh well, we need to check these covenants, because if you're planning on developing it in 3 years, we actually need to know you can develop it in 3 years. And it's all those connected dots, isn't it, that bring everything together.
Yeah, and it's things like, for example, people that buy houses to live in but think I might rent this out in the future. Like you said, there are covenants. If you buy a house that's got a covenant on it saying you can't do that, but you're not telling everybody from the start that might be your long-term goal, then all of a sudden your goal hits a block, so to speak. And I think sometimes people think, oh, I can only really tell them now, but I'd prefer to know people's 5 and 10 year goals, so I can, like you say, plan it in, because I could be recommending a 2-year fixed rate that's absolutely the wrong thing for you, because of, you think, well, this is what is right now, but in 3 years time, 4 years time, 5 years time. And people think sometimes that's just for residential, but it's not. It's the same for buy-to-let as well. And funny you should say about the traveling. I've literally on the way here had a conversation with a client who was saying, maybe I want a 2-year fix because rates might go down and da-da-da-da. And then when I properly started talking to him, he's like, we might go to Australia for a year. And I'm like, well, why would you want a 2? You're in Australia when your deal comes to the end. That's a problem. So I was like, well, why don't we look at a 5-year fix? Yes, your interest is going to be higher, but if you're abroad for a little bit of time, we don't have to worry about it because we're not making any changes. So it's all, like you say, it's always about that longer term kind of having that conversation. And plans change, and don't get me wrong, it happens all the time. I'm just doing a renewal for somebody who promised me they were selling the house in 2 years, and then they're like, I want to keep it, but interest rates are so high. And I'm like, well, 2 years ago you said this. But as much as you can try and plan it in, and it's just, like you say, honesty is really, really important.
And that can be so hard when you're first starting out, because you don't necessarily always know what you need to know or where you're planning to be. And so I think it brings us back to the idea of networking as well, and talking to other people that have been through that.
See what opportunities there are out there, isn't it? And sometimes
listening to their experiences, and the more of that you do, the more of it you'll absorb, and then it'll start to inform your decision making.
Well, it's been lovely to see some of the networking events that I've been to, including Derby Property Meet, that the friendships that have built up, because there's some people having met at the the networking event, then we'll go out for coffees and do different things together, and people will be showing their properties to others so they can actually see, well, this is what I'm doing, this is how I've solved this problem. And I think that's where the strength is, in that network of people that you build, because then you're not by yourself. If you've got a problem, you go, oh my God, this has just happened, what the hell do I do? You kind of sending a message to someone and go, help, and they go, oh, get this guy to come out and have a look, or I've not had, but why don't you have a word with this person? And all of a sudden you've got this chain of people that is there to help you, rather than you're sitting there stressing out at home by yourself thinking, oh my God, how am I going to do this? Which there are days, I'm sure Fiona agrees, there are days, especially when you're investing, that you think, oh God, what's the plan now? Because but it's interesting here with the planning, because I would say even with your residential planning, you need to be thinking about the future, especially if you're thinking, actually, I might keep that house, because I've done that with one of our properties. And one of the key things we said to our broker was, we're planning on letting this out in the next couple of years when we move out. And that was making sure we had the right lender who would allow that consent to let. So there is quite a bit of the right people in place and telling them that information.
Yeah,
so
I think that's the thing. I think people sometimes think, oh, if I tell her, then I'm going to get declined. And things change. So I'm not going to recommend a mortgage for somebody who says, oh, I might go to Australia in 3 years' time. Like, that may change, but in the same breath, like you say, it's just making sure that if that does come to fruition, he's not going to turn around, or she's not going to turn around to me and go, oh, I told you that. So it's making sure it works in hand. And just like you said about stuff going wrong, I think one of the best things I've seen about Derby Property Meet as it's grown is seeing our own networkers come up and talk about what they do. The past few sessions have been really good, and people are being honest. They're not sitting there going, it's such a lovely shiny journey, look how much money I've made. They're like, look at what went horribly, or look how much this has cost me that I didn't think it was. And I think that's what I love about network, is the fact that people are coming up and being really honest about their journeys and their experiences. And that's what makes it such a great group, because like you say, you know that person you can pick up the phone up that person and go, we've just tried to take a wall out and it's done this. What would you
property's
suggest?
collapsed, kind of thing. Hopefully nothing that serious.
I think there's something about property investors, but we're really quite humble and we're quite honest, and we do want to help each other. There's no competition in the room. And I think that's a very powerful attribute.
It's been interesting over the years, because I know there's like certain properties that will come out on the market, and half the people that are going to be offering on the same property and you go to the viewings and all the same faces there and go, hi, so what are you thinking of doing with this one? But it's part of the process in some ways. And I think as long as we all kind of work together, we can all hopefully achieve our goals with it, with the right support. So moving forward then, what should you be looking for in your professionals to get the best out of them? So I know I'm trying to get the best out of my clients and they're trying to get the best out of me. How do you guys kind of find, Chris, to get the best out of you? What are you kind of looking for with clients?
Yeah, I mean, it starts right from the beginning. I mean, you've got to have a really good relationship with your clients and really understand kind of what they're trying to do. And it goes back to some of the things we were talking about earlier about being honest, looking at what your future plans are, knowing what you want to do with it. I mean, one of the first questions that I ask, which is quite an open question, is, well, tell me the background. Why are you doing this? What are you trying to get out of this? And hopefully that then leads us on to, this is what we're trying to achieve. This is what we want to do. And sometimes it leads towards those inevitable conversations around, oh, well, we're going to put a 2-story extension on the back here. It's going to wrap around the front here. We're going to knock this wall down and all the rest of it. And that's fantastic. But obviously it informs me. And then when I go to do my investigations, I've always got that in the back of my mind that I need to make sure that the clients are able to do this. So, for example, when I'm looking at things like drainage searches, I'm looking at the roots of the surface underneath the property and saying, okay, well, if you want to build there, you might need to consider build over agreements and consents and things like that. I think really a good professional listens to their clients, listens to what they want, and then can act accordingly.
Yeah, I think much the same, to be honest. And I think for a client looking for particularly a mortgage advisor in the current climate with everything that's going on, it's understanding, and I come back to the word goals again, but if you are working with, and I'm going to use the word vanilla, and I don't mean that to be offensive to any brokers, but there are some brokers out there that want to do residential, simple buy to let, a little bit limited company, and that's understand that that is their bag. And if you're going to start looking at more complex stuff, you might need to consider what that means and their lenders. And I think having that conversation with the advisor, with the team that you're working with, and understanding, you know, how far can they go? And if it is that your goal is more than that, that's fine. It's just making sure that you're not going to either end up frustrated or in a situation where you really want to buy a property and that advisor can't do it, or for whatever reason. I think for us looking for clients, I think especially in the current market, and I know we've said of it so much, but things are changing so often that just to act as quickly as you possibly can. It's very easy to think, oh, I want a bit of time to think about this. And I'd love to give my clients time to think about deals and say, I'll take a week and think about what you think. But
it's normally 5 o'clock, isn't it? I need to know by 4 so I can get the application.
Yeah, the lender's just emailed at 5 to 3 and I've got till 5 past 6. So if you could just make a decision now, that would be fantastic. On your whole life savings, go. But no, and I think having an advisor that, especially in the current market, like, let's make no bones about it, it's a challenging time. There's all sorts of stuff being said about how high is base rate going to go? What does that mean for mortgage rates? Obviously, it's been in the press a little bit last week or so. What are lenders going to do to support borrowers, but not resting too much on the laurels, because from what I've seen, that's not going to offer long-term assistance. It's short-term fixes only. But so, for example, we have a promise to our clients that if we're doing a remortgage or a product transfer for you, we're making sure that whatever deal we secure today is going to be the best deal for you when you change over. So if rates drop and you've got 3 months before you go, make sure that broker's promising you that they're going to change it, because that's what we're promising all our clients. And it's one of those, it's doubling, tripling workload in some cases, but the end goal isn't that. The end goal is making sure that client's getting the right thing. But yeah, I'd say at the moment, if any client's looking to do anything property related, just make sure you've got your ducks in a row. So if you set up a brand new SPV, fantastic. You need a bank account.
Yes, not always easy to get, let's be honest.
No, but you absolutely need a bank account. And there are some lenders that will allow you to do it without, but at some point you need a bank account. And what I'd say is just make sure that's in place. And it's just little things like that you're not going to get come unstuck, that a 4.5% rate suddenly became 5% because you didn't have that one little thing in place. So it's just
quite massive, really, in some ways.
Yeah, or you can have a huge impact just on a case of like a week. At the minute, a week can make a massive amount of difference, which is quite frightening, unfortunately. But it's working with that broker that's going to kind of tell you up front, right, send me this and this is what we need. And I try and onboard clients, a bit of a technical term, straight away and say, give me everything except for your most recent bank statements, because I can grab them close to the time. But I always try and make sure I've got all the ID, all the tax calcs, everything I need. So when the property's found, I'm like, right, I just need 3 months bank statements. Let's
to get the best out of you, it's make sure you get all the information there as soon as possible, so that you're in a position ready to actually proceed. And I'm guessing that's every finance broker making sure it's there fast.
But that goes for any professional, doesn't it? In terms of you need your professional to be looking towards the future, looking kind of 2 or 3 steps ahead and thinking, you're going to need this in 2 weeks, 3 weeks time. So let's think about that now and make sure that the steps are in place so that we know that when we get to that hurdle, we can go straight over it. We're not going to get stopped at all by it. And any good professional, whether be it financial advisor, be it your mortgage advisor, be it your solicitor, your accountant, they're all going to be able to look a few steps down the line and say, actually, we need to consider this now so that we're ready to move forwards.
I've always found you need to like the person you're working with.
Yeah.
That's always that's probably
Like
I was
and
going to say. You have to like them.
Yeah.
What have you found as you've used different professionals, Fiona? I know you've used some of the guys in the room. But kind of your investing kind of.
I think one of the things Chris said right at the start is about personal recommendations. And one of the first recommendations I had was a different mortgage broker, in fact. And when I had a preliminary discussion with them, it didn't go the way that I wanted it to go at all. And I was left feeling very confused, shall we say. So I went to somebody else and asked for another recommendation. And then I did find Gemma, fortunately. But it is about, Gemma took the time to ask me, what are my goals? What do I want to achieve? And then I had no qualms in sending her all my bank details and everything she asked for. But trust, respect, likability, these are absolutely key things. I've used Chris. I think the key when I used Nelson's for my conveyancing was that it was an auction property. So I absolutely
Speed was
knew.
essential.
Speed, absolutely. But having your solicitor contact you proactively, you're not having to chase them all the time. It is about building relationships. So that was absolutely key. And we did complete within 28 days.
we were waiting for that, weren't we?
Notwithstanding a few complications along the way, but yeah, absolutely, we did. And I think communication is absolutely key with everybody that you're dealing with, and they need to be able to communicate in a way that's going to suit you as well.
Yeah.
I mean, some people will want everything in writing, others will be happy with a text message. But you've got to find that balance that's going to work for you, and there's got to be a responsiveness.
Which is probably both ways kind of thing, from a responsiveness from them as well as yourself. But I know I've got a few clients that send me emails and they need an immediate response. And you're like, I'm not going to get to it today. I will get to it in the next day, but I'm not going to do it instantly because I've got a few other clients who have asked questions as well. But then that's not that they're not important to you. It's just... You're not sitting. None of us are sitting there twiddling our thumbs, waiting for that one email to come in. But again, our clients are important to us, and we want to help them achieve what they're trying to do.
We always try and manage expectations right from the outset, and just kind of say, look, we will call you at least once a week to give you an update. We will update you at key milestones as the transaction goes through. You will get emails from us telling you this is what's happening, this is what's going to happen next. And so, every opportunity that we can to keep you informed, because I think that's what's scary about property investing is the lack of control, isn't it?
You pass it completely out of control.
It's you putting your hard-earned money, potentially your life savings, into something, and you have to trust everybody around you. It comes back to that issue of trust. That they're going to deal with it for you, and it's going to happen, and it's going to be okay. And relinquishing that control is very, very difficult to do. So
everyone,
if you are kept really well informed, then it makes the whole process that much easier.
Yeah, in fairness, that's a lot of the feedback we get. So at Signature, the way we work is for every 2 advisors, there's 1 client manager, and we call them client managers because, I mean, I work with my dad. She's not admin. She's had 20 years estate agency experience. What she does not know about titles,
she's sharp.
And standard construction. Like Fiona will send me a property. She's like, "What do you think?" And Deb will literally glance over my shoulder and she'll go, "Non-standard construction." I'm like, "What? How do you know?" She's like, "Windowsills, I can tell." But it's just that, and it's making sure, like, for me as for an advisor, it's more than just the person giving the advice, but it's when your mortgage application goes in, what next? Is there somebody in there who's chasing the lender, chasing the valuation, uploading the documents? If there's a query coming in, getting on the phone to you straight away. And as soon as it hits your solicitor, are they making sure that the offer has gone through the LMS system correctly, or whatever it might be? Or does it need to be faxed because some lenders live in the 1600s? But and it's just that, like you say, that you will have a weekly contact. If Gemma's on the phone, there is somebody else who's there and available. And it's that kind of thing. It's that, like you say, mortgage advice and property is more than just the application's gone in and the solicitor's received the paperwork, even to the point that it's completed now and I don't know when my first payment's coming out, or it's completed now and I'm not quite sure about this. Is there a team there that have got a good relationship with, the lenders, the solicitors, and whatever it is? We always make sure we know who the acting solicitor is, even if it's a big free legals, God help us, situation. We always try and make sure that we've at least got a case handler so that there's a point of reference. And I think that, like, ownership and making sure that there's a little bit of personal responsibility from every single person involved. If something's going wrong as a client, do you know who's answering that phone call, or do you know who you need to speak to? And I think Nelson's work the same way as we do. Like, we always make sure that they know who the point of reference is.
It's interesting saying communication, because I was at a solicitor's the other day with one that we work with at Shapcott's, and one of the funniest things that he said was he phoned someone. It's like, "Can you get me an update from the valuer on where things are at?" "Oh, it's not ready yet." I think he literally was saying to them, "Please phone them. Don't you tell me. Don't preempt the answer. Please phone them." And then I think, like, okay, phoned. And it's like, okay, it's on its way. And you're like, it is just those having those people in your corner to kind of make those calls that go, please can you phone them? Just talk to them, and it might actually be ready. It's just they've not got around to sending it, and if they send it, we can complete and we can
Yeah.
do. And
I will just touch on something you said there about the word free. Free doesn't always mean good, and this is something, well, definitely doesn't mean good. I think it's about paying for quality service, and knowing that you will get that quality back. There are, I don't think you mind me saying this, brokers out there that will offer you free.
Mm-hmm.
You don't.
We don't.
But you make a huge difference.
Yeah. And I think, I've never worked for a free broker, so I can't comment on a free broker, but the way we work is we're completion fee only. So, I mean, this is what I'll say to, particularly in this situation. So you've got investors starting their journey, and there might be some brokers out there that are completely free, but there might be some brokers out there that take an onboarding fee or fees up front or that sort of thing. I have conversations with clients who've got the deposit, the market's a bit weird, rates are going up and down, houses aren't moving. And I'll say to them, as long as it takes you to buy a house, and until those keys are in your hand, you don't pay me a penny. And if it all falls down and we have to start again. And I think sometimes people are wary about brokers because of past things that have happened, and obviously previously advice hasn't been very good. I can assure you we are so highly regulated, we can't do that anymore. But not just that, it's making sure that, like, if you're paying an upfront fee, if your advisor says we want an upfront fee, find out what you're getting from that. Because, and this isn't me, saying anything negative about upfront fee paying brokers, everybody structures their business in their own way. But what are you getting from that, and what are the clauses and what are the clawbacks? Because, like you say, there are free brokers out there.
And I've used some that actually have worked really well for our residential, but I'd probably call them a vanilla broker.
Yeah.
And what they do is great. They're free. It works perfectly. But they're not going to be doing my limited company, HMO commercial mortgage deals, because that is not what they do. So that's kind of very much back to the point where you said, make sure you're finding one that is doing the deals that you're doing and can support you in what your goals are, because there is a mix. Like, there's a mix of brokers, there's a mix of accountants, there's a mix of solicitors. There's a mix of all sorts of things out there, and it's just finding the people that are the right people for you, isn't it?
The thing. I mean, I've got a client who's got 20 plus properties, and he uses his old broker, his vanilla broker, for his and again, it sounds really expensive, I don't mean that, but he's got like 4 personal names that he just PTs, and he's got all the stuff. And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. But when it's the limited company SPV day one refinance, he's like, he doesn't know what I'm talking about.
And I think it's a bit like that with accountants as well. Tax accountants, not all accountants will have that deep property knowledge. And one of the reasons that you're a fabulous accountant is you own property. You are a property investor. You see things, in real life, and it makes a big difference.
I think from an accountancy point of view, understand the implications as well, because we've seen it before where the accountant's gone, set up as a trading company, it's going to be much more tax efficient, and we go, you've got 3 rates and they are 7%, and they go, why? And you're like, because you've done something with your deposit that means it's now a trading company rather than a SPV. And they go, oh, can I reverse that? I'm like, I don't know, go back to your accountant. But that's when we go back to that whole line your goals up from day one. I mean, we've had a conversation about that, about limited company before, haven't we? Because there's so many different ways you can structure it. All can work as long as they are 100% what you need, and not because that's what you think you need.
And I was going to say, I've met quite a lot of accountants, and some seem really amazing. Others, there may be more trading company, sole traders. They're not really property. And I think one of the things I had on some of the training I had in our early property days was use an accountant who invests in property. And it's probably something that many people hear, and it's probably quite true, just to get that understanding and that knowledge of when you say, I've got problems with my foundations, been there, dealt with that one. And valuation being downvalued and how that's impacting, and there's so much that goes on, and it's just either getting an accountant who's investing or has a really deep understanding of what is actually happening and how it's impacting. And funnily enough, I think yesterday, I've been getting emails from people who are going through refinancing, and lenders are looking at accounts. I've got one that's like, what's the fixed assets? What is this? What is the other creditors? Might be precise, actually. I think maybe. But different lenders are asking different things, aren't they, at the moment? So just because you think, oh, well, they're not looking at my accounts because they're doing a personal guarantee, as long as they're happy with me, they'll give me the mortgage. More lenders are looking at more information every single day at the moment. So I think the lending side of things actually sometimes is dictating the structure, which is maybe not the right tax route.
Yeah.
But you've kind of got to get the right funding to be able to do the legals correctly to then figure out where your company sits. So actually, people go, I've set up my company, and moving forward, it's like, well, is that the right approach? And is that going to be the best option? It might be. It might not be. Everyone's slightly different with where they're coming from, which is kind of why I always tend to say, at least speak to an accountant who knows what they're talking about, so that you're getting the right advice at the right time. And most accountants will give you a free consultation, 30 minutes, some up to an hour or 2 hours. I tend to do 30 minutes these days and then see where it goes and have further chats as necessary. But it just means hopefully they'll give you a direction. They won't probably tell you the answer exactly because they like to get paid for giving some advice. But they will generally kind of help kind of determine which direction's more likely to be the right option. Yeah. So at least you're starting to take those steps forward.
And I think what we said right at the start, but short-term goals, long-term goals as well, because what I'm trying to say. So your accountant structure, your limited company structure now doesn't have to be your limited company structure forever. If you make that as a first-time landlord, if you make your limited company structure so complicated because you've got non-directing shareholders and you've got a holding company and this, that, the other, and long-term that is absolutely right for you, but to get you on that ladder, it's not necessarily right now. And then when your broker comes to you and goes, it's 7% because you've done all this.
You've made it complicated and they don't like complicated.
Yeah, and it's that, it can change and the structure can move. And I think the way it works best is that power team. Introduce them all from the very start. Like, I'm not the enemy of the accountant and vice versa. But if you give me their telephone number and I can go, right, can this be changed? And the accountant goes, oh yeah, that shouldn't be a problem because the tax implications won't be for another 5 years or whatever, and we can amend it again. Fantastic. But I think sometimes it's almost like, I don't want the accountant to speak to the broker because it's a bit, and
I think sometimes people think things can't change either. And it becomes more problem with the legal side of things because when you've bought a property in one name, there are stamp duty costs and there are other things to change.
Implications that a little bit more difficult to change the law. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, but then what you would be looking for from your profession is give you options. You could do this, you could do this, you could do this. These are the implications if you do one of these options. Once you've got your options, then you can liaise with your broker, your accountant, your lawyer, and say, well, these are my 3 options. Which one would you recommend? Go round your power team, talk about the various options that are going to suit you. Because everybody's circumstances are different. What suits one individual or one person is not going to suit the next person. And so as long as you've got all the options in front of you, then and all the information, you can decide what's best for you.
Yeah, and I'd probably say ourselves, we're all the ones at the beginning of the transaction in some ways, because after we've done our bit, then it goes on to the builders, the actual kind of the doing what you set out to do, which is a whole different game, isn't it, Fiona? Which I'll probably look at doing a session with some people talking about builders and getting the best out of your builder at a future date, because that's a whole separate topic in itself. But any tips and advice can you offer to those getting into kind of property, starting their adventure as they're kind of doing the first few ventures?
Oh, shall I go first?
Yeah, I'll let you go first.
I was going to say that you've got this power team, you've got these professionals. Use their knowledge. Ask questions. If you're being told by your lawyer that there's this restrictive covenants on this property, here's what they are. Go and read them. I don't think that's necessarily enough. I think you should be kind of pushing back and saying, okay, I've read them. I don't understand them. What does it mean? And they need to be able to explain it to you in plain English. So don't be afraid to ask questions. You're paying for advice, and your professional should be giving you advice, and it should be advice that you understand. So even after you've asked the question and got the advice, if you still don't understand, say, I don't understand. Be honest and push back further.
It was interesting when I got a personal guarantee for a mortgage recently. And one of the things that they said is you do know that this is personal guarantee for this mortgage, but if you have any other mortgages with them in the future, this personal guarantee still sits until you get rid of it. And I was like, actually, I wasn't fully aware of that. I kind of know that I'm going to have to pay it, but actually to discharge the personal guarantee and get rid of it in the future and things, actually there's a few bits that you need to be
Yeah.
aware of. So it is making sure that you're getting the right advice, and they're telling you the plain English, because I have to say the legal jargon is not completely easy to read at
we
times.
do our best to kind of translate it, but yeah, sometimes there are really complicated legal issues that are difficult to kind of translate, because you need to have that fundamental background of 120 years of property law and where
Only a
it's
few.
changed and where it's changed, why it's changed, and to try and put this property into these circumstances and come out with a solution. And every property is different, and not all laws apply to certain properties, and you have to really dig down into it. And that's before we even get on to stamp duty, which is
a whole different
thing. Yeah.
Because have you come across any interesting covenants, Fiona, in properties you've gone for? Have you managed to stay away?
I don't think anything particularly unusual.
I have a favourite. Which was not to keep any offensive animals, such as rabbits.
Rabbits
I
are
wasn't
offensive.
sure who found rabbits offensive, but apparently
okay.
whoever
Dangerous,
drafted that covenant did not like rabbits.
Wow.
I mean, we've had one this week. It's not covenants, but I mean, I can't really explain it 'cause it's not my case. But a first-time buyer trying to purchase a property, the minerals under, because obviously Stoke-on-Trent's quite a big mining area, are owned by the Duchy of Lancaster. However, because the Queen has died, it's not all been signed over to the King yet. So it's like delayed the whole purchase because nobody's signed the Queen's rights over to the King or something yet. And I was just like, pardon? It's a two-bed terrace in Stoke-on-Trent. What's that going to do with anybody? Yeah, so it is like you say, there's some, you've just got to be able to go, no, come again. Because I was a bit like, pardon? When they said it.
I mean, some of the really archaic laws, I mean, the stuff that relates to the Crown are really, really complicated and really unusual. But mining things in particular do take a lot of time. So if you get stuck with a property that's subject to mining, it can drag things on whilst you track down the right people and get the right consents. And then sometimes there's a fee payable to various individuals for it as well. So yeah, but that's what your expert is there to kind of hold your hand through it and say, right, these are the processes that we need to do. This is the steps we need to take. And I guess don't shoot the messenger. Your professional is there to give you the advice and to talk you through it. It might not always be the news you want to hear, but they are acting in your best interest and they're trying to guide you through it in the best way that they can. So go with them, make sure you understand it, and please listen to the advice that you give.
I've certainly looked at a few legal packs for auction properties recently, and it is like reading
gobbledygook.
It really is challenging for me, and that's when Chris gets a quick email. But yeah, I wouldn't trust myself to be able to read those legal documents. I need them properly checked.
I think with the auction packs especially, we've looked at one and it's like, and there's this additional fee and this additional fee, and the person selling is going to make you pay their legals and all these different things that if you're not careful,
And
you
they
suddenly
can be
find a
really-
big bill.
They can be really sneaky with them as well. We saw one where they had a whole ream of special conditions, and on the first page they were quite clear about you must pay this fee, and it had the fee in numbers and brackets, and you must pay this fee. And then on about page 5 of the contract, they had additional clauses, but in that case you must pay this, but it was in words, so the numbers didn't stand out.
Oh.
And so the way it was drafted just made it look, it was quite
Sneaky.
It was
Yeah,
quite
sneaky.
sneaky. You had to go to a different page to where all the other fees were, and it didn't stand out as much as those fees as well. So you do have to be careful.
Fiona, any tips and advice from your point of view of kind of getting started? Any ideas to help people getting going?
I think there's a lot of free training available. There's a lot of paid training, coaches, mentors out there. I think when it comes to things like that, find the right fit. Look at all the strategies that are available to you. Do a bit of research and a bit of homework. What is the right thing that fits with you, with your values, when it comes to property investing? Not everybody is going to be converting a warehouse into 600 flats. It's really, it's key to get that training and that support. Back to the networking thing, I'm such a strong believer in networking, whether you're a very sort of outgoing person and you are going to ask 100 questions, or whether you're going to sit at the back and listen, I think you can gain a lot from going to networking and being brave enough to ask these questions. Property investing will always have benefits, challenges, things change over time. And I think as a property investor, you've got to be a little bit flexible, a little bit understanding, and keep that long vision in mind. Perhaps what's challenging today will be a great opportunity in 10 years. So don't be fearful of what the media is telling us at the moment, where the Bank of England base rate might go. I don't know. I asked Gemma and she doesn't know.
It changes every 10 minutes. That's why.
I don't know.
I think the media tries to scaremonger a little bit at times. So it's just trying to get your information from sensible people who are actually talking sense and looking at the economics of it and what is actually happening, because we're still in a housing crisis. We've been in a housing crisis for decades, I would say, because we're just not building enough properties. So there is always going to be a need for housing, which is why I suppose I'm a big advocate in the sector, but it's just finding the right opportunities, isn't it? Gemma?
I suppose, we've talked a lot about the things that are the key tips. I'd say understanding a little bit of where you want to start, understanding a little bit of where you want to go. Honesty is a big one. As an advisor, people starting out, I think the things to know is, where do you want to invest and why do you want to invest in that area? So it's the Northeast because somebody told me I can get a property for 60 grand, but I've never stepped foot in the Northeast, so I don't know anything about it, which is fine if you've got the right network around you. And I think we've touched on auction, and I'm a big advocate for auction. It works in the right places. If you are going to an auction, make sure your solicitor and your advisor are prepped and you have an idea of what you're going to look for. Please
don't buy anything. That is,
but just making sure, because what people sometimes don't quite understand with these 28-day auctions is it is 28 days or you get a hefty fine. So make sure everybody's prepped, make sure you've got an agreement in principle, make sure you know you're viable to lend, because I know plenty of people out there who've started their journey on an auction and they've bought a property, and it's the golden goose these days, isn't it? Does it exist anymore in terms of a 60 grand property that becomes a 150 grand property with a new kitchen and new bathroom? They are
I'd like some.
Yeah, they are still out there, but just make sure that whatever it is you're going to look at, whatever it is you're going to buy, if it's an auction, if it is a property that you've seen on Rightmove, whatever it is, that you just prep in your broker so that they're prepared for it as well. Particularly, I mentioned auctioning because we've talked about it, but an auction is urgent, and that advisor needs to make sure they can clear their desk to get that application in. If you haven't told them and you're just going to drop it on them on a random Tuesday and they're stacked out and going on holiday in 2 days' time, that will bring a bit of panic, and you just want to make sure everybody's on the same page. But I think property's exciting. Like, I've seen in my short time working in advising, which has been just over 2 years, I've seen so much that people have done, and there's so much change out there. We've seen more supported living coming into play. Serviced accommodation is a massive buzzword at the minute. Like, there's so many different ways. Property investment is so much more now than I own half of a terrace street and I rent it out for £500 a month. Like, there's so many different strategies and investments, and it's so exciting. But just make sure that you've got your basic things set up, you're ready to go, and have those conversations, and I suppose have fun with it, really, like as much as you can do in the current climate. But there are a lot of success stories out there. We see it all the time, don't we? And it's great to see people saying, I've just had an offer accepted on this, or whatever it is, or I've just refinanced that. I know John Crew was buzzing about his valuation last time, and not many people say that.
It's inspiring, it is, and that's why that being together with other investors is exciting.
It's hard to celebrate
place.
by yourself a little bit, isn't it? Because you're happy, it's like, but I kind of need other people to celebrate with me to make it as exciting. And it's fair enough if you're in a couple, but if it's someone doing it by themselves, it's just you at home going, yes, I got my valuation. It's like, I kind of want to share that, but
tell somebody.
I want someone who's going to be as excited as me, because you tell your friend who's maybe not into property and like, oh great, whereas you kind of want someone else who's actually in property to go, oh my god, that's amazing, because they know how much you've worked on it and they know what effort you've put in.
I mean, if your property is valued up, I can tell you now, your broker is buzzing. You're like, oh my god, it's valued up.
I was happy with my valuation, so yes, it does bring a smile to your face when you get it in. But yes, it can be interesting in the current climate, can't it? Any final thoughts from anyone before we wrap up tonight?
I think from me, and not to be a pessimist, but there's always going to be that line in the sand where you kind of have to be prepared to walk away from a deal.
Yeah.
Oh,
Sometimes you
yes.
can fall so in love with the idea of something that you start trying to persuade yourself that I can make it work. I can make it work. And I think there's got to be a line in the sand where you just kind of say, actually, I can't make this work. The numbers don't stack.
That's what I was going to say. The numbers
title's
have
not
to be
right.
key.
Yeah. So, enjoy it, absolutely. But also be prepared to say that this is an investment. We are investing in property.
Yeah.
This is not for us to live in, as glamorous as it might turn out to be. And it needs to make a return.
Yeah.
So there's got to be a point where you say, enough's enough.
Well, we've walked away from one where we checked the covenants and we couldn't do what we wanted with the property.
Yeah.
So it just didn't work. And it's like, we're not buying it to figure out what else we want to do with it. We can't do it. I think you saw that one. I think you kind of said you can't do this. And it's like, oh, guess we're not buying that one then. It's just the way it goes, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think on that, it's just a case of bearing in mind that your broker, your solicitor and your accountant, we all want you to achieve. So if we're telling you something is going to be more hard work than it needs to be or not really doable, that's not because we're thinking, oh, I could just do without this today. That's because we're saying to you, like, in your strategy, this is going to cause you long-term problems. Are you going to struggle to resell? Are you going to struggle to let? And all those sort of things. And I think if somebody's giving you the advice to maybe reconsider, like Chris said, that's because we're working in your best interest every single time. I mean, it's like we say with when you sent me properties and I'm like, it's non-standard construction. We can do it, but it might cause you problems later down the line. And it's, for some people, they'll go, I'm willing to take that risk, and that's fine. But for some people, it might be like, I don't need that extra element. So it's just remembering that we're all working in it.
Yeah. And I'd probably go the opposite way and kind of say, if you are looking at doing something creative with it that is maybe slightly not something any of us maybe have seen, and there are some people who come up with these really interesting ways of doing things, and it works out amazing, and you kind of go, I never saw that you could do that. I suppose the key there is ensure you educate or make the person you're working with understand what you're doing, because it may be something that if you come up with this great, I don't know, you've got this property and you're going to convert some into flats, some into commercial, and do something interesting with it that is going to work. You've done your numbers, you're happy, and you're getting advice that, oh, well, I don't think we can do this. Give them that understanding, because then if they understand it fully, then they may go, oh, okay, if that's what you're doing, we need to do this, this, and this. But if you've not told them that, then you're not going to know, are you? So you're going to be looking at it from a different perspective, going, I don't think this is a good idea. When actually go, oh, if that's what you're doing, we can work with that. Okay, I need to do this and I need to bring that in. Oh, you'll probably need a full repairing lease for the commercial bits, and we need to get this person involved and stuff. So it's all that side of things that
brings us back to that communication.
Completely. Go with your head, not your heart. But remember, you're running a business decisions. That's got to be bottom line, I think. So I'm a big advocate for networking. I think there's tons of power in it. If you are in Derby, you should come to the Derby property meet or anywhere in the East Midlands. But if you aren't in the East Midlands, Your Property Networking magazine, it's a subscription only, has got all the property networking events in the back by region, including Derby Property Meet. So head there to find your local networking and benefit from it.
No, and there is loads all over the country, from PIN meetings, progressive meetings, independent meetings. They're all over. So just kind of find the one that's local to you and go and start meeting some people who potentially could become your best friend for all you know. And I'm sure there's a few really good friendships that have been created over time.
Be consistent, keep going.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for your insights. It's been really interesting hearing your thoughts on the different areas. This has been Talking Property with Kimberly Shapcott. Check out the channel for other great videos on property accounting, tax and accountancy. If there is any other questions you have, please do leave some comments on the video when it goes up on the channel, and we'll catch you when we're talking property again.
make tax less taxing.